Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since the last update on Project Golf, but not much was going on and then it all kind of happened at once, so I'll just get straight into it. Shortly after making the last video, I bought a set of used AP coilovers with the plan of lowering the Golf maybe 20 or 30 mil and stiffening up the ride. The main purpose was to stiffen up the ride, because it felt far too soft and worn for my liking, but the improvements didn't exactly go as planned. The coilovers didn't come with a C-spanner, so I couldn't adjust the fronts, but it didn't really matter because I was able to adjust the rears and it was still way too low to be a usable car. So I had to revert back to the original suspension, which turned out not to be worn but just hella soft from the factory. The only car I've ever owned that was softer than that was an American sex offender van I had back in my child scaring days. I'd also started paint stripping the new alloys with the plan of putting new rubber on them. I'd managed to strip one wheel before becoming suicidal from the amount of effort needed. I just ended up bringing the other three to a sandblasters. I'd really forgotten how horrible paint stripping was and how labour intensive it was. Also, I was using gloves that were far too thin, so I had to keep a bucket of water nearby for when the gloves split and the paint stripper started burning at my hand. So, 0 out of 10, would not recommend. They then got a few coats of high build primer and cheap silver paint, which went on well until I tried to apply the lacquer, which reacted with the base coat. The problem was I was going on the North Coast 500 a couple of days after this happened, so I just needed to get the new tires put on them ASAP and would have to deal with the consequences of repainting them again when I got back. It was just after getting the new tyres fitted I took the car in to get the tracking done and finally got a chance to see the underneath of it on a proper ramp, and it needed more work, including the rear beam bushings, which is an absolute pig of a job, and a new drive shaft. At this point I was kind of done with the car, as I'd really just bought it to be a reliable cheap car to run on veg oil, and with all the stuff that I had done and was still needing to be done, I could have bought a much more fun car for the same amount of money and effort. This realization was probably further realized by the car having to be recovered after the control arm fell off a couple of weeks prior on a trip to Edinburgh. This was a particularly sore kick in the teeth because when I'd bought the car, I'd seen that the control arms had been replaced but didn't realise that they'd used the wrong bolt sizes to hold them on, and it was a bit of a cowboy mechanic that had done it. Ultimately, the car was not safe to take up to the Highlands, so I had to borrow a backup car that turned out to have part of the alloy missing. I still to this day have no idea how this held air. Anyway, with a replacement wheel fitted, the trip went on without any more problems. Well, to be fair, there was one more issue caused by the underpowered 1.25 Fiesta, because it generated a seriously strong urge to get a more capable car for the twisty Scottish roads that I'm blessed to be living around. Although you can have fun with pretty much any small car on those roads, anyone who's a petrol head and has been this far north will understand the requirements to do them in a proper hot hatch. I'm still a strong advocate of alternative fuels, and if the Golf had been in better condition, then I'm confident it would have happily run on veg oil for a long time, since the engine was running sweet even though it had done 175,000 miles. It just didn't make sense for me to sacrifice so much in driving enjoyment and time spent on repairs when I don't drive enough miles at the moment to justify the fuel cost savings. A return to petroleum distillate was what was needed. After doing a bit of man math and figuring out that there aren't many good sub £500 cars available anymore, it made sense to go for something a little bit more upmarket that needed some work, with the intention of adding value to it. So the Golf was sold a few days ago to a new owner who is also a veg oil enthusiast, and my new car was acquired. This is my new 16-year-old Renault Clio 182 with the Cup Pack. It's a solid car but needs some serious TLC, which is mostly just cosmetic. So the list includes the headlights look like they've been smeared with butter, the plastics are very grey, and the bonnet needs replacing with some pretty nasty rust bubbling. It's also missing a few bits around the airbox. It needs new exhaust mounts, the alloys refurbed, a proper detail, a service and the tracking done, and replacement injector. But other than that, it's a decent little car, although it does have odd wipers. I have the first batch of stuff ordered for the 182 coming soon, so the new project car will be getting some much needed TLC very soon, but that's for the next video, and what the general plans are for this car will be revealed then as well. So thanks for tuning in, and if you liked the video, feel free to subscribe for more cheap car action. Also, it's good to keep track of Pete's Volvo videos because they're also kinda cool. So, see you around.